always like to see. Nice and relaxed. Enjoying the warmth, no doubt. It was an appalling night last night. Very, very windy. And it's been very cold. So, well-deserved rest. As I was mentioning, it was very windy last night. Hello. You can possibly still hear the wind. And one consequence of that is that this pine tree at the front of our house dumps a shed load of cones on the ground. You may have gathered by now that I'm obsessed by tidiness, so this bugs me. But also, if I go over these with my lawnmower, which admittedly won't be for a while yet, it's like chomps them up and spits out at like 1,000 miles an hour, and it's very frightening, so I don't like to do that. But I also don't like things to go to waste, and so I've discovered, especially at this time of year when the range is basically ticking over 24 hours a day, this makes excellent first kindling. So I've got the scraps bucket that Will brought food scraps home with for our compost. I'm now going to set about collecting all these cones. There we go. Although the skies are relatively blue, rain is predicted for later, so good to get these up and get them under cover, keep them dry, light my fires. Here we are, bucket number 2. That's quite a lot of pine cones. You'll probably gather it's not the world's smallest bucket. I have discovered that when nature lands you these windfalls, don't let them go to waste. That into my first kindling box. Excellent. All ready for the next few weeks. Thank you, nature. I don't know how well this will be coming across, but as you will have seen, we've had our first proper cold morning. Now, in context, I appreciate that's not cold for a lot of places in the world, but it's cold for here. So much so, well, it's slightly later in the morning now, but the bird bath was well frozen over. It's now just quite frozen over. I can see that it actually looks better with my eyes than it does through the phone, unfortunately, but definitely a winter wonderland this morning. This is interesting. I thought, look at the difference Will's car parked under the tree versus my car. It's interesting how much warmer being under the tree made that environment. It was a really clear night last night. And it's all looking beautiful this morning. Ooh. Crispy underfoot. With long grass in the orchard. I can hear the creek though, so not cold enough to freeze the creek. We won't be skating on that later. I'm going to head back into the house. It's nice and warm. And I'll catch up with you later when I've got some really cool updates to share with you. I'm really excited to be able to do that, so I'll see you in a bit. I've been actually really quite ill. Not COVID or cold or flu or anything like that, and I won't go into details, but I'm still not feeling great, so I'm very enthusiastic about the things that I'm going to show you and talk about now, but if my enthusiasm doesn't quite come across in the way it normally might, it's not because I'm not feeling it, it's because I'm too cold and tired to express it with the full gusto that I normally might. Anyway, let's take a look at some of the things that I've been storing up, excitedly waiting to show you. Oh, and just FYI, that was a freak nose-blowing incident. So, essentially, the things that I've been keeping up my sleeve are garden related. So I've got a few things to show you. In this little pot here, I've got 4 bare-rooted trees. So, I mean, it really cuts down on the price. These are all less than $10 or £5. And they are to start again this part of my garden. I'll go and have a closer look with you in a minute, but I'll start off with talking about and showing you these trees. Admittedly, they just look like twigs, but they are starting to spring into life, so I need to get out and plant these. There are several ways you can deal with bare-rooted plants, but you have to do something with them pretty quick to stop the roots drying out. Trees really, or plants in general, really don't like that. I'm going to try planting them in situ again, maybe more for me, but I hope that I might have learnt a little bit from last time, and I'm going to try and plant them in a slightly different way, slightly above ground, in the hope that by the time they reach the clay layer, they will naturally be bigger and more robust and able to better penetrate it. Just to quickly go over, I've replaced the flowering dogwood, which is one of the trees that I lost, and I've got a Persian ironwood. I've got a ornamental flowering pear, and I've got an eastern red bud. So as you can see, they're all non-native old world trees, and that's just because I'm all about diversity. I know that they're going to be therefore at a disadvantage, but I am quite careful when it comes to choosing plants. I do put thought into it. So I hope that the conditions here will suit them. But a lot of that is going to come down to me and my ability to prep, I suppose. So yes, this is the oak, which has been in the ground for a while now. That was a present from Will. That's getting quite established. I'm thinking I might actually be able to take the cage away maybe this year. And the other trees are going to go here. So essentially I've chosen trees that have spring interest and that they're all or almost all blossoming trees. So that'll be pretty to look at, bearing in mind that I can see them from my living room. So it's something nice, I thought, to be able to look at from the house. There's also not currently a lot of blossoming plants on the property, but there are a lot of bees around, so I thought it would be good for the bees. This is a state forest, and there's a trek that goes the other side of our fence, so I thought it might also provide a little bit of privacy. And also in the summer months, these trees will provide shade. Deciduous old world trees create a cooler shade, so the ground beneath them will be cooler, And so whilst you might be like, oh, why are you planting more trees? You're and closer to your house at that. You're on the risk of making your property go on fire. I'm hoping that the opposite will happen. Whilst there is a chance, sadly, that these trees could burn, the bushfire that went through our property didn't make it this side of the fence. And I think it would be tricky for it to hop that sort of gap. There'll still be quite a sizable gap between the forest and the trees on my property. But also the trees will have lowered the temperature around them. So just generally I'm trying to slowly reduce the ambient temperature around the home and to help mitigate against fires. Anyway, and so then come autumn, they've all got beautiful autumn colour. I put a lot of thought into the types of trees that I've bought, their kind of height they'll grow to. I don't really want like a 50-footer, so they're actually quite petite trees, but they've got interest almost the whole year round. And they'll also, I hope, be doing quite a practical job for me and for the wildlife. So now all I have to do is plant them. That's not it. Here we are. In other garden-related news, whilst I was at it buying the trees, I couldn't resist buying some plants for the flower bed in front of the house. It's been very frosty here. You would have seen that it was down to -2 at least overnight. That's the temperature when I got up, so it would have been colder than that. So I've temporarily put the little plants behind this glass screen. I crudely made this cold frame, but it's done a good job. And in here I have got 2 more hardy geraniums. Actually, now that I think about it, those aren't for my flower bed. Those are for my geranium bed, which is there. I love hardy geraniums. I bought this lady's mantle because I love lady's mantle. And that's a bit of a bargain plant. I had it in a previous garden, and before you knew it, it was everywhere. So I'll get millions of plants out of that, I hope. I was sent this delphinium for free, so I don't know much about that. But I'll have a look and see sort of what size it grows to, and that'll determine where I put it. I bought this penstemon. And then also, in these bags that I'll plant out, I've got 2 aquiledias, a pink and a yellow. They're still nice and damp. I love aquiledias, so I'm very excited to have a variety. I did previously buy a pink aquilegia from another nursery, but when it flowered it was actually purple, so that was disappointing. And then lastly, our local post office was getting rid of its old notice board, so Will asked if he could have it, and he lugged it home, and I'm planning to turn that into a cold frame. Essentially, I'm going to probably move the hinges so they're on the long side, and move the handle so that it's on the long side too. Then I'll sort of build these sides up to ramps, so that then the glass is on an angle. If I put it flat, obviously I could get seedlings going. It is quite deep, but it wouldn't take long before they were touching the glass. And also, more of a concern for me, I don't know if this is likely, but more of a concern for me would be if an unsuspecting kangaroo or wallaby hopped on it and smashed through it and cut their feet to ribbons. So I'm thinking I might put it down there. I don't know that I want it up at the house necessarily, mostly because this is the south-facing part of the house and it's usually in shade. And I can't really think of anywhere else to put it that's kind of accessible in terms of watering, but not really in the way. So I thought I might put it there. Well, that's what I'll be up to today, mostly dealing with all this wonderful, excellent, amazing new plants and dreaming about working on my cold frame. I'm going to make a start. So for anyone that's interested, those are the two that I got. This is quite a shady spot, and in spite of what it says there, I did look out ones that could cope with that. It's not that it doesn't get any sun, but it's relative to the north, the part of the garden that faces north, which is that way. This only really gets sunlight in the evenings, once the sun's gone around the house, but it will get some sun. So I'm going to plant them out now. 2 down. Just to quickly go over what I've done as per normal, if you've seen me do this before. I shoved them in the ground. I've made a dung donut around both of them to help provide nutrients and also to help contain the water. And then I've made a cage of twigs. Now, I've read that geraniums produce a compound in their leaves which is very off-putting to animals that might want to eat it. In the literature they specifically refer to deer and rabbit. I've occasionally seen a rabbit here, and I've occasionally seen deers. However, the thing I'm most worried about are wallabies, and there wasn't much advice in the literature about wallabies. Anecdotally, I do know that this plant was pretty much left alone and grew very large, but these three are still quite small plants, and I don't want them to get munched before they've had the chance to get as large as this one did. So it does seem as if the wallabies will be leaving the geraniums alone. However, I wouldn't want to risk it at this point in time whilst they're still so vulnerable. Sorry, I forgot to say also I gave it a water with some seaweed feed, which I always do for any new plant, just to help it along. Just going to leave you on a couple of updates. That's all of my ornamental plants planted. Not much to see that's particularly different, but I've got a yellowy aquilegia here. I've got a fancy purpley bluey aquilegia here, sort of reddy whitey, I don't know. I put my alcamellia, my lady's mantle there. I put my penstemon there, and my free, whatever it was, there. As always, what I've tried to do is take into account the colour of the flower of the plant I've planted and the colours of the plants around them, so that I've got a nice mix. And I've taken into account the eventual height and spread of the plants I've planted. So the taller plants are more towards the middle and the smaller plants more to the front. And then things like the aquilegias I've planted and the lady's mantle, I hope they'll start, if they're happy, spreading themselves about and going mad for it. That's what's happened with the aquilegias I transplanted from elsewhere, so they've started self-seeding all over the place, which is what I like to see. Then lastly, over the old garden gate, a bit hard to see because they've sort of fallen over, but I've laid out the 4 trees that I'm going to be planting, and again exactly the same principles. I make a note of the albeit admittedly eventual, but the eventual height and spread of the tree. Also, if it flowers, the colour of the flowers. So for example, that's the pear. That's going to potentially grow to sort of 8 to 10 metres high, and with quite a wide spread. So it'll basically grow to potentially a tree that sort of size. That's why I've pushed it back. I hope it'll sort of blend in. But it's white flowering, and the dogwood is also white flowering. This one flowers pink, and this one flowers discreetly sort of red, but that one's mostly, that's the Persian ironbark. That's mostly for its autumn colour. So now I'm going to plant them out. Oh boy, I'm not feeling great. I had my second COVID booster yesterday, and I'm wondering if it slightly knocked me for 6. The other 3, and my flu vaccine didn't. But I'm not on the peak of my form today. But anyway, I've started, so now I have to finish. And I hope, see you next week. Bye.